I have been doing this long enough to know that when a storm system comes along that genuinely affects every single region of the country at the same time, you stop whatever you are doing and you pay attention. Not just the plains, not just the coast, not just the Great Lakes, every region, all at once. And that is precisely what we are staring down right now as one of the most expansive and consequential storm systems of the entire year begins to take shape across the continental United States. Whether you live in Seattle or Miami, whether you are in Chicago or New Orleans, whether you are in Boston or Phoenix, this system is going to reach out and touch your life in some meaningful way over the next 5 to 7 days. And I'm going to spend the next several minutes making absolutely sure you understand what is coming, when it is coming, and what you need to do about it before it gets there. Let me start by giving you the scale of this thing, because I think that is the first thing people need to understand before we get into the specific regional details. We are not talking about a localized severe weather outbreak confined to a single corridor of states. We are not talking about a regional winter storm that clips the northern tier. We are talking about a coast-to-coast, border-to-border weather system that is going to simultaneously deliver severe thunderstorms and tornadoes to the south, a historic blizzard to the northern plains and Great Lakes, dangerous ice accumulation across the interior Midwest, severe coastal flooding and damaging winds along the entire eastern seaboard, and a significant rain and wind event across the Pacific Northwest. When was the last time you heard a forecast where every single one of those things was happening at the same time? Because I am struggling to remember one, and I have been tracking weather patterns for a very long time. The engine driving all of this is an extraordinarily deep and powerful upper-level trough that is going to dive from Western Canada southward across the Rockies and then sweep eastward across the entire country over the next several days. The central pressure of the surface low associated with this trough is expected to fall to levels that some of the modeling is comparing to historic bomb cyclone events, meaning this low is going to deepen so rapidly and so dramatically that its impacts are going to be felt across virtually every state in the lower 48. Bomb cyclones get their name from the meteorological term explosive cyclogenesis, which is when a surface low drops 24 millibars in pressure or more within a 24-hour period. The faster a low deepens, the stronger the pressure gradient around it, and the stronger the pressure gradient, the more intense the winds, the precipitation, and every other weather hazard associated with the system. What we are watching develop right now has all the hallmarks of one of those historic deepening events, and the impacts are going to reflect that. I want to address every region of the country in this forecast because I genuinely mean it when I say this storm affects everyone, and I want every person watching to come away from this video knowing exactly what their area is facing. Let me begin in the west, because that is where the first impacts are already being felt, and then work eastward through the country as the system evolves over the coming days. For the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, the opening chapter of this story is a powerful atmospheric river that has been targeting the coast for the past 24 hours, and is going to continue pounding the region through the next 2 to 3 days. An atmospheric river is essentially a concentrated corridor of intense moisture in the atmosphere that acts like a fire hose aimed at the coast, and the one currently set up across the Pacific is particularly impressive on integrated vapor transport values, which measure the total moisture content of the atmospheric column, are running well above the threshold for significant impacts, and what that translates to on the ground is extraordinary rainfall totals in the coastal ranges and Cascades, dangerous river flooding across western Oregon and Washington, and the very real potential for mudslides and debris flows in areas that are already saturated from recent wet weather. If you are in Portland, in Seattle, in Eugene, in Olympia, or in any of the river valleys of western Oregon and Washington, river flooding is your primary concern over the next 48 hours. The Willamette, the Chehalis, the Snoqualmie, the Puyallup, these rivers are going to rise, and in some cases they are going to rise to flood stage or beyond. Please be monitoring river gauges in your area and be ready to move to higher ground if your property is in a known floodplain. At the same time, mountain snowfall is going to be extremely heavy across the Cascades and the northern Sierra Nevada, with several feet of new snow possible at pass elevations, which is going to create dangerous travel conditions and avalanche concerns across the higher terrain. As we move into the interior west, the system's character changes somewhat as the moisture rings out across the coastal mountains, but the wind story becomes the dominant headline across the Great Basin and the Colorado Plateau. High wind warnings are already in effect across portions of Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. And as the trough deepens and accelerates over the next 24 hours, wind gusts across open terrain in these areas could reach 60 to 80 miles per hour. That is the kind of wind that closes mountain passes, that blows semi-trucks off of elevated highways, that snaps power poles, and that makes any kind of outdoor activity genuinely dangerous. If you have travel planned to cross Interstate 80 through Nevada, across I-70 through Colorado, or across any of the mountain passes in Utah over the next 2 days, please check conditions before you leave and be prepared for the possibility that those routes are going to be closed. Now, as we push eastward into the central part of the country, this is where the storm's most dramatic and most dangerous features begin to fully develop. And I need everyone in the region from the northern plains all the way down to the Gulf Coast to be paying close attention to what I'm about to describe, because the outcomes across this corridor are going to be severe in the most literal sense of the word. Starting in the north, a historic blizzard is setting up across the Dakotas, Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and the upper peninsula of Michigan. And I want to be very precise about my use of the word historic here because I do not use it loosely. The combination of snowfall totals, wind speeds, and duration that is currently being forecast for this region qualifies this event as potentially one of the most significant winter storms to affect the northern plains in at least a decade. We are looking at snowfall accumulations of 18 to 30 inches across a broad swath of central and northern Minnesota, with isolated totals approaching 3 feet possible in the areas that get the heaviest and most persistent snow bands. In northern Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan, lake-enhanced snowfall is going to push totals even higher, and some locations in the UP could be looking at snowfall totals that genuinely challenge all-time storm records. But the snowfall totals alone do not tell the full story of how dangerous this blizzard is going to be, because it is the wind that turns a major snowstorm into a truly life-threatening blizzard. Sustained winds of 35 to 45 miles per hour, combined with peak gusts approaching 60 miles per hour, are expected throughout the duration of this storm across the Dakotas and Minnesota, and those winds are going to create whiteout conditions that reduce visibility to zero. I am not saying near zero, I am saying complete whiteout. Conditions where you literally cannot see your hand in front of your face. Driving in these conditions is suicidal, and I am choosing that word deliberately because people die every single year when they venture onto rural roads in blizzard conditions and become stranded. If you are in Fargo and Grand Forks and Bismarck and Aberdeen and Duluth and Marquette, please make your decision right now before this storm arrives to stay home for the duration. Stock your pantry, fill your prescriptions, charge your devices, and then stay inside until conditions improve, because no errand, no appointment, no reason is worth your life in a whiteout blizzard. The ice storm threat sitting just south of the blizzard zone is something I also need to address in significant detail because it tends to receive far less media attention than both blizzards and severe thunderstorms. Yet, it is often the most economically devastating and the most disruptive form of winter precipitation that exists. A swath of freezing rain is going to develop from eastern South Dakota southeastward through southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, and into northern Illinois and Indiana, as a layer of warm air sits above freezing at mid-levels, while surface temperatures remain below 32 degrees. Ice accumulations of 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch are possible across this corridor, and I want you to really think about what that means practically. Every road surface becomes a skating rink, every sidewalk, every parking lot, every bridge deck becomes coated in a layer of transparent ice that is essentially invisible until you're already sliding. Tree branches loaded with 1/2 inch of ice begin to snap under the weight. Power lines sag and snap. Transformers fail. Hundreds of thousands of people can lose power from a significant ice storm. And unlike a snowstorm where you can shovel your way out after it ends, an ice storm leaves infrastructure damage that can take days or even weeks to fully repair. If you are in the ice storm corridor, South Minneapolis, Rochester, Sioux Falls, Des Moines, Dubuque, Rockford, South Bend, please prepare for the possibility of an extended power outage. That means having warm clothing and blankets accessible. It means having food that does not require cooking. It means having a battery-powered or hand-cranked weather radio so you can continue receiving information even if your phone loses power and you cannot charge it. Do not wait until the ice is already falling to think about these preparations. Do that today. Directly south of the ice storm zone and stretching all the way to the Gulf Coast, the severe weather component of this system is going to unfold with a vengeance, and this is the part of the forecast that has the Storm Prediction Center most actively engaged right now. The warm sector of this storm, the region ahead of the cold front where temperatures are warmest and Gulf moisture is richest, is going to extend from eastern Texas northward through Louisiana, Arkansas, western Tennessee, and Mississippi, and the atmospheric environment across this warm sector over the next 48 hours is going to be extraordinarily favorable for significant severe weather, including tornadoes, destructive winds, and very large hail. I want to talk specifically about the tornado setup because it is genuinely alarming. The low-level jet stream that develops in advance of this system is going to be running at 60 to 70 knots overnight tonight across eastern Texas and Louisiana, which is an exceptional value for low-level wind speed. That low-level jet is going to dramatically enhance the veering of winds from the surface through the lowest few thousand feet of the atmosphere, and that veering wind profile is exactly what creates the streamwise vorticity, the horizontal spin in the atmosphere that gets tilted into the vertical by thunderstorm updrafts and produces rotating supercells. In plain language, what that means is that the atmosphere tonight and tomorrow across the Gulf states is going to be set up like a trigger waiting to be pulled, and any sufficiently organized thunderstorm that develops in this environment has an extremely high probability of producing a tornado. The Storm Prediction Center has placed multiple states under enhanced and moderate risk designations for this event, and within those risk areas, there are hatched zones indicating a significant tornado threat, meaning tornadoes of EF2 intensity or greater are considered likely. If you are in Shreveport, in Baton Rouge, in Jackson, in Hattiesburg, in Mobile, in Pensacola, in Montgomery, these are the communities that face the most elevated tornado risk during this event, and I need you to be taking concrete preparation steps today rather than waiting until the warnings start flying tomorrow. Know where your shelter is. Have your shoes near your bed tonight. Have your phone charged to 100% before you go to sleep. And if anyone in your household has difficulty hearing or would not be woken by a phone alert, please have a physical weather radio in the room with them. The timing of the severe weather across the Gulf states is going to be somewhat complicated by the fact that storms will be ongoing at multiple different times of day and night as various boundaries interact with the rich surface moisture. The first round of storms is expected to develop this evening as daytime heating and a sharpening dryline trigger development across eastern Texas and western Louisiana. This evening window from roughly 5 o'clock through midnight is going to be the first high-risk window for tornadoes and large hail across eastern Texas, Louisiana, and southern Arkansas. Then as we move into the late night and early morning hours, the focus is going to shift to Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle as the low-level jet maximizes and the cold front accelerates. That overnight window from midnight through 6 in the morning is arguably the most dangerous part of this entire severe weather event simply because of the nighttime factor. And I want everyone in those states to have their alerts set up and ready to wake them before they go to sleep tonight. This is precisely the moment where I need to talk to you about something that directly addresses the nighttime severe weather problem, because it is one of the most serious gaps in personal weather preparedness that exists. The standard advice to keep your phone nearby and the volume turned up is simply not reliable enough when you consider how many people sleep through phone notifications, keep their phones on Do Not Disturb, or have notifications silenced after a long week of storm alerts. This is the exact problem that my personal weather alert service Max Alert was designed to solve. With Max Alert, when your precise location is inside a tornado warning, tornado emergency, or severe thunderstorm warning polygon, you receive a direct phone call from me personally, not a push notification, not a banner that appears on your screen and disappears in 5 seconds. An actual phone call that keeps ringing until you answer it. Because when a tornado is approaching your location at 2 o'clock in the morning, you need something that is going to penetrate your sleep. And a phone call does that in a way that a notification simply does not. Max Alert is $14.95 for an entire year of protection for your household. Given what I am describing about this storm and the overnight severe weather threat, I cannot think of a more important time to sign up than right now. The link is in the description below, and it takes about 2 minutes to set up. Now I want to shift the final third of this forecast to the eastern United States because, as I said at the beginning of this video, this storm literally affects everyone, and the tens of millions of people living along the eastern seaboard are going to feel this system in a very significant way as it pushes offshore over the second half of the week. As this deep, low-pressure center tracks northeastward and approaches the mid-Atlantic coast, it is going to undergo another round of rapid intensification. And the interaction between the storm system and the cold air locked in place across New England is going to produce a classic nor'easter setup for the interior northeast. I want to be very clear that the coastal versus inland track of this low is still carrying some uncertainty, and the exact rain-snow line along the coast is going to be highly sensitive to where the center tracks. What I can tell you with confidence is that interior New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, interior Maine, upstate New York, and the higher elevations of western Massachusetts and Connecticut is facing the threat of a significant snowfall event as this system pushes through, with accumulations of 8 to 16 inches possible in the favored areas. At the same time, the coast from Boston southward, through Providence, New York City, Philadelphia, and Baltimore is going to experience a very significant wind and coastal flooding event regardless of where the rain-snow line ultimately sets up. Wind gusts along the coast during this event are going to be exceptional. I'm looking at the potential for gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour across coastal Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, with gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour extending southward through Long Island, coastal New Jersey, Delaware, and the Maryland and Virginia shore. Those wind speeds along the coast during high tide cycles are going to drive dangerous storm surge and coastal flooding, and communities in known flood-prone coastal areas from Cape Cod all the way down through the Outer Banks of North Carolina need to be paying close attention to the timing of high tide cycles relative to when the peak winds arrive. The combination of astronomical high tide and storm surge during a coastal storm of this magnitude can produce flooding that overtops seawalls, inundates parking lots and ground floors of coastal buildings, and makes low-lying coastal roads impassable. The inland wind threat from the system also deserves attention for the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, well beyond just the immediate coastline. As the low deepens offshore, the pressure gradient across the entire region is going to become very tight, and widespread wind gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour are going to affect areas from the Appalachians eastward to the coast from North Carolina through Maine. At those wind speeds, you are looking at widespread tree damage in areas where the ground is saturated from recent rainfall, and saturated soils make trees far more vulnerable to being uprooted because the root systems have no firm anchor. Power outages across the Northeast from wind alone could affect several 100,000 customers during this event, and Northeastern residents should be making the same power outage preparations I described earlier for the Midwest ice storm zone. As I bring this forecast to a close, I want to come back to the point I made at the very beginning, because it bears repeating. This storm is not a regional event. It is not a southern event, or a northern event, or a coastal event. It is a national event, and the breadth of its impacts is genuinely extraordinary even by the standards of the most active weather years on record. Somewhere in America during this event, a family in Minnesota is going to be stranded by blizzard conditions. Somewhere, a community in Alabama is going to be picking through tornado damage. Somewhere, a neighborhood in coastal Massachusetts is going to be dealing with water in their streets from storm surge. Somewhere, a mountainside in Oregon is going to give way in a mudslide triggered by saturated soils. All of these things are going to happen within the same 72 to 96 hour window, driven by the same massive storm system, and the scale of that is almost difficult to fully comprehend. What you can do is make sure that you and your family are not caught unprepared. Whatever region you live in, whatever hazard is heading your way, make your preparations today while the weather is still calm and you have the time and the mental bandwidth to do it thoughtfully. Because once the storm arrives, the time for preparation is over and the time for survival begins. And I want you firmly in the first category and nowhere near the second. We are going to have extensive live coverage of this event across multiple streams on this channel as each phase of the storm unfolds. Today, we will be live as the Pacific Northwest impacts intensify, and as the first severe storms fire across eastern Texas and Louisiana this evening. Tomorrow we will have full day coverage of the southern severe weather outbreak, and we'll be tracking the blizzard simultaneously across the northern plains. Day 3, we will be live for the nor'easter and coastal flooding event along the eastern seaboard. Subscribe to this channel right now and hit that bell icon for all notifications so you are immediately alerted when we go live. There's no better place to get continuous, accurate, real-time storm coverage during an event of this magnitude, and I am going to be here every step of the way to make sure you stay informed and stay safe. Thank you for watching. Please share this with everyone you know, regardless of where they live, because this time that advice genuinely applies to everyone. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the live stream very soon.